Hey there you guys. I wanted to post up a talking head video about the Final Fantasy TCG that's just about to come out because I've been sent two of the starter decks for it to try and get people into it and to see whether it's the next big thing or not, and it looks pretty good, to be quite honest. I mean, initially, my first impressions of it was that I thought it was going to be like UFS. This is before I'd opened the boxes or anything like that, where you pick a character from your favourite Final Fantasy game and they're the core of your deck. But actually it turns out it's a lot more like many other card games like Magic and Pokemon and Vanguard, that kind of thing. And to be honest, I was kind of a little disappointed by that, purely because I thought, well, I like games to be a bit more unique and a bit more out there than rather than say, we'll take a load of Magic's kind of mechanics and just morph them into the branding. Like, we're running out of ways to say the word tap at this point. I think this refers to it as dulling your cards. I mean, we've had exhausting, we've had tapping, we've had committing, we've now got dulling. It's like, I think we're running out of terms for that, turning your card sideways. The game mechanics draw very heavily from Magic the Gathering, as many other games do. Like, you have your draw phase, main phase, combat phase, main phase 2, end phase, that kind of thing. I'm not going to sit here and explain to you how to play the game because I think there's a lot of videos out there, and Square Enix actually have their own one. So I'm going to leave a link to that in the description box below. So if you want to learn how to play the game, then follow that link rather than listening to me. The first thing that I noticed about this game is that the artwork is a little on the inconsistent side. Now, some of the cards look really, really good. Like, I mean, it's nice and simple. The card frame I'm actually very impressed with, and if this focuses properly, then you can see just, it's an in-game character model. It's just a stock photo really from the game, and I'm fine with that, purely because, well, you know, they have a lot of good artwork in the Final Fantasy series. However, it's when most cards are like that, where you'll have various different cards where they're all different characters from the games, and come on, focus for me, there we go. You know, and they're all different characters, but they still fit in within the frame and the quite plain background. The first thing I noticed is that it all looks very clean, until you get cards like this, which are literally just screenshots from the game that they come from. Now, this works fine when it comes to the later games in the series like Final Fantasy 13 that look very pretty anyway. But when you're using character models from Final Fantasy 10 and things like that, come along, focus for me. There we go. It doesn't hold up very well. It just looks dated and it kind of looks very static. So I just kind of thought that it would have been nice if there'd been a bit more cohesion in the artwork across the board. I haven't picked up the FF7 starter deck yet because this wasn't one of the ones I was given. But at the end of the day, I'm looking back at it and thinking, well, what about Final Fantasy 4 and 6? I mean, you can use the artwork from that, but you can't really use the screenshots for it because on a card it would look a bit strange. As I said, I've been playing the Final Fantasy 13 deck against the FF10 one. And the mechanics are solid, and they're relatively simple, actually, meaning, you know, it should be pretty easy to get other people into the game. The way that you know, it's very similar to Magic. Every character has a power rating, and as soon, like, they have a power rating but no toughness. So when they clash, you deal your damage simultaneously, unless you have a First Strike ability, which is named First Strike in this game again. And they die simultaneously, that sort of thing. The different thing between this one and Magic is that you can attack with more than one guy at the same time, but you can't defend with more than one guy at the same time. Now, when I read this in the rules, I thought it was really weird, but when I played the game, I could see why that happens, because it's a lot easier to block things than it is to attack things. The only thing I don't like about the mechanics is there's one mechanic that I'm not particularly keen on, which is the EX break, which is a mechanic where when you take a card into your damage zone, like Vanguard, if it has the EX break ability, it triggers it. Now, I don't mind that per se, but I think it's worded quite poorly. I think that, you know, it's a little confusing. It lists cards. Let me see if I can find a card that has an EX break ability, and then I can actually explain it to you more clearly. From a character, preferably. Oh, I know which one I'm looking for. There we go. Now, it's a shame because I actually really like this character, but Jill here has an EX break ability that says when she enters the field, choose up to 2 forwards, which are the creatures in this game, and freeze them. Now, it says when she enters the field, but the EX burst mechanic says when she enters the damage zone. So I'm a little confused by this, and as someone who's played a lot of card games in his time, and, you know, to a high standard, I don't quite get how this works. And I don't know whether it's when she enters the field and when she gets EX burst, or whether they're just referring to the field as the entire play area. So I don't know whether she triggers it in 2 different ways or just one. Hopefully they've, you know, worked the kinks out when it comes to this in the future. But we have to remember that this is just the first set. You know, they've got plenty of time to kind of pick it up a little bit. My favourite thing about the game is the way the resource management works. I think it's great. I love the way that you have to discard cards from your hand to make 2 mana, or crystals in this, but you also have backups that dull to produce crystals as well. The reason I like that is because you draw 2 cards a turn instead of 1, and your hand management becomes even more important in this than it has ever done in a card game before, because you have to weigh up your options between whether it's worth discarding something to get something quickly or saving it and waiting until you have your backup so you can start playing things more consistently. It really pushes kind of the boundaries between aggro and control out even further, and I love that. I think it's great. In general, I actually think the game's pretty good. You know, I honestly think that a steaming turd could be printed with the Final Fantasy branding on it and people would buy it. But luckily, the game isn't half bad. I'm a big Final Fantasy fan, so I mean, I'm probably going to be buying it anyway, and that's why I'm starting to make these videos on the Final Fantasy TCG. But I also think that it could be pretty popular. I do hope that there's a few kinks that they work out in the process, but generally speaking, I think the game's pretty solid. If you're willing to look for more videos on the Final Fantasy TCG or any of the other videos that I do, then subscribe to Josepha and hit me up in the comments below if you have any questions, and hopefully this will get you started and see what you think of the Final Fantasy TCG. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll speak to you later.